First of all, I like to thank Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Mission Society Brisbane for giving me an opportunity to witness this great event. I will not take you much of the time in introduction because the subject itself it is a vast subject. The conference, which is organized by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Mission Society Brisbane, on the subject India advancing forward on principles of secularism, justice, liberty, and equality. First, let me thanks everyone for this gratitude you shown to me. Jai Bhim to all of you. As this subject is very vast, I want some patience from you because the situation which we are going through in India, I have prepared the research paper or the paper which we are submitting it to United Nations. I will present that paper over here. The subject India advancing forward on the principle of secularism, justice, liberty, equality. This is the subject of this talk. Is it a question or is it a statement about the advancement of India in the fulfillment of these principles? In any case, the topic is vast and requires deep analysis of secularism, justice, liberty, equality. These principles find their place in the preamble of the Constitution of India. If reference is drawn to the Constitution, then the preamble also refers to fraternity, which is missing from the headline of today's topic. Fraternity is the cornerstone of India's constitution to bring about solidarity and unity of the Indian people. It is, in my view, the main principle for nation building. The preamble, like you said, the preamble of the first draft constitution reads, "We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into sovereign, democratic republic and to secure all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity of the nation, etc. etc." The word secular was added to the preamble wide 42nd Amendment of the Constitution and was not part of the Constitution as adopted on 26th November 1949. But leaving secular aside for 1 minute, a topic I shall return to later, but let us examine the meaning and importance of liberty, equality, and fraternity given by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar when presenting the final draft of the Indian Constitution to the Constituent Assembly on November 25, 1949. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar says, "We must make our political democracy a social democracy. Political democracy cannot last unless there lies at the base of it social democracy." So, what does social democracy mean? It means a way of life which recognizes liberty, equality, and fraternity as the principles of life. The principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity are not to be treated as a separate items in a trinity. They form a union of trinity in the sense that to divorce one from the other is to defeat the very purpose of democracy. Liberty cannot be divorced from equality, and equality cannot be divorced from liberty. Nor can liberty and equality be divorced from fraternity. Without equality, liberty would produce the supremacy of the few over the many. Equality without liberty would kill individual initiative. Without fraternity, liberty and equality could not become a natural course of things. It would require a constable to enforce them. We must begin by acknowledging the fact that there is complete absence of two things in Indian society. One of these is equality on the social plane. On the economic plane, we have a society in which there are some who have immense wealth as against many who live in abject poverty. We must recognize fraternity. What does fraternity mean? Fraternity means a sense of common brotherhood of all Indians, if Indians being one people. Fraternity is the principle which gives unity and solidarity to social life. It is a difficult thing to achieve. In India, there are castes, and castes are anti national in the first place because they bring about separation in social life. They are anti national also because they generate jealousy and antipathy between caste and caste. But we must overcome all these difficulties if you wish to become a nation in reality. For fraternity can be a fact only when there is a nation. Without fraternity, equality and liberty will be no deeper than coats of paint. It is important to emphasize that the objective resolution proposed by the Congress party, although included the ideas of liberty, equality, and justice, but the resolution did not include fraternity, which was inserted into the preamble by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. Principles of liberty, equality, fraternity were elaborated upon as quoted above by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. February 5, 1951, when Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar introduced the Hindu Code Bill, he also remarked that the idea of secular state in the constitution did not mean that they could abolish religion. It means that the government could not thrust any particular religion on the people. Returning now to the main topic, India advancing forward on the principle of secularism, justice, liberty, and equality. If this is a question, then each and every case has to be examined to understand how far these principles have moved the country forward, which would be a stupendous task. Each and every government has to be measured, so it is not just a nation building principles, but it also represents a yardstick with which to measure the performance of each government that comes into power, and where each government doesn't fulfill this promise of the preamble in its nation building principles, then that government, that political power, that would look political party is not fulfilling the aims and objects of the founding father and founding friends when this constitution was adopted. So, as we recognize these fundamental principles of liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice as a yardstick to measure the progress of every nation, of every country, and the governments who have a duty to implement these principles, then it is only right that each successive government must be examined in terms of their performance in fulfillment of these principles. So, a comparative study of each government since independence has to be undertaken, which is a vast subject. There is a mountain of available literature, and it would be a stupendous task to capture the political, social, economical, religious, cultural, legal history, etc. of the Indian people since independence. To help me illustrate some key features and current trajectory of the Indian Constitution, I have drawn heavily from a recent book called Modi's India, Hindu Nationalism and the Rise of Ethnic Democracy, written by Christopher Jeffrelot. I will be quoting from this book as a reference point because I believe, book written by a French political scientist specializing in South Asia, particularly India and Pakistan. No book of this kind can be possible in India by Indian authors for fear of reprisal. This is what he writes. The word secular does not imply secularization, but on the contrary refers to equal recognition of all religions in the public sphere. The Indian state not only does not recognize any official religion, but it also guarantees freedom of conscience and of worship, which were enshrined in the Constitution of 1950. Article 15 prohibits any discrimination on religious ground. Article 16 applies this rule to civil service recruitment. Article 29 to admission to public school or those receiving state subsidies. Article 25 stipulates, subject to public order, morality, and health, all persons are equally entitled freely to profess, practice, and propagate their religion. The Indian secular constitution, while it bans a religious teaching in public schools, stipulates all minorities, whether based on religion or language, shall have the right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. India does fulfill the criteria of secularism that Charles Taylor laid out. First, everyone can freely exercise his or her religion. Second, every religion, whether of the majority or the minority, is considered on equal footing in the public sphere. Third, all spiritual families must be heard. Indian secularism reflects a conception of the nation that rather than being based on a separation of the religious and the political sphere or even on the secularization of the society is instead founded on the official recognition of religious communities that enjoy the same rights. Indian secularism is in fact rooted in a centuries old civilization in which a wide variety of religions have cohabited on Indian soil. New Lines, some of its political leaders have written fine chapters in the story of this civilization, including a scholar, the first Buddhist emperor, the Mughal emperor Akbar the Great, who established a dialogue between Islam, Hinduism, and Christianity. So, when we examine the progress of the Congress Party, which was the predominant party up until 1980s, you don't have to ask what were the challenges this government faced and how did it manage to tackle the difficulties and the challenges it faced. Questions obviously have to be asked in terms of social and economic indicators, in terms of exercising of rights and freedoms, and so forth. You can see that during the Congress rule under Mrs. Gandhi, the constitution was changed, but the preamble of the constitution was also changed. So, what were the challenges that particular government of Indira Gandhi faced is something to reflect on, but not today. In the context of contemporary politics and the rise of Hindu nationalism, Jaffer Lott writes that nationalisms are based on an ideology of vulnerability and a prejudice threatening others, and that is the starting point which lies in Hindu nationalism. That it is an ideology based on a sense of vulnerability and prejudice of others, including the Muslims, that the architects of Hindutva stigmatized. This movement crystallized 100 years ago along with its key organization, the RSS, but its political party, the Jan Sangh, and then the BJP was unable to assume power until 2014, as it has failed until then to attract mass support. Over the first 2 decades of the 21st century, Hindu nationalism became coupled with the form of national populism represented by Mr. Narendra Modi, ensuring its success at the polls first in Gujarat and then in India at large. The ideological foundation of Hindutva has remained intact, but it now incorporated a new aspect, a populist political style. This repertoire, which is Modi's hallmark, enabled the BJP to cross a new threshold of 30% vote, which the party had previously been unable to attain on account of its elitist profile. Under Modi, the government moved India towards a new form of democracy, an ethnic democracy as defined by Sami Samua or majoritarianism. In this new political system, the majoritarian community is assumed to be one and the same as the nation, thereby relegating minorities to second class citizens. In Modi's India during his lifetime, it was a de facto ethnic democracy as amendments to the laws of the country remained minimal. The promotion of Hindu nationalism at the expense of secularism took the form of attacks against liberals, including NGOs, intellectuals, and universities like JNU, and the saffronization of education. At the same time, minorities were subjected to both physical and symbolic violence by Hindu vigilant groups, which exerted a new form of cultural policing. These groups, usually under the umbrella of Sangh Parivar, started to form parallel state with the tacit approval of the official state as they launched one campaign after another, such as their fight against love jihad and land jihad. Their attempts at reconverting those forefathers had embraced Islam or Christianity, and their attacks against people accused of slaughtering cows, a very emotional issue that was the root cause of series of lynchings. Vigilantes were active not only in the streets but also online, with the blessings of the country's rulers. The atmosphere created by Sangh Parivar vigilant groups and BJP IT cells trolls has been largely responsible not only for the lynchings of Muslims but also for attacks on liberals, including intellectuals and journalists. The guilty parties in these cases often belong to other Hindutva school of thought inherited from Savarkar and made up of activists who explicitly legitimize violence. These groups dehumanize the other, the Muslim, through a deeper process than the dehumanization orchestrated by Sangh Parivar ideologies, because their aim goes beyond weaponizing the fear of the other to turn into anger. Their goal is to eliminate the other outright in a move from fear to hatred, from riots to targeted killing. You will remember that international sanctions were imposed on Mr. Narendra Modi when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat in reaction to the 2002 pogrom. In 2005, he was denied a diplomatic visa to enter the United States, and his existing tourist or business visa was revoked under Section 212 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which makes any foreign government official who was responsible for or directly carried out at any time particularly severe violations of religious freedom ineligible for a visa. But the boycott ended when Modi became Prime Minister. Since then, international criticism has come mostly from Muslim countries and the United States. Scholars of Gulf countries have protested against what they call India's Islamophobia. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has also protested officially, as have some states including Iran and Turkey, against the way Muslims are treated in India in the context of the abolition of Article 370, the anti-CAA movement, and the 2020 Delhi riots. The United Nations has been more systematic. As early as 2018, in her report on contemporary form of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance, Professor E. Tendai Achiume, the special rapporteur appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council, said the election of the Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party has been linked to incidents of violence against members of Dalit, Muslim, tribal, and Christian communities. Reports document the use of inflammatory remarks by BJP leaders against minority groups and the rise of vigilantism targeting Muslims and Dalits. Subsequently, United Nations officials were concerned about the fate of human rights activists, journalists, demonstrators who had been arrested after protesting against the CAA and the stateless people that the NRC is likely to create. Michelle Bachelet, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, pointed out that the CAA Citizenship Amendment Act was fundamentally discriminatory in nature and invited India to consider carefully the compatibility of the law with India's international human rights obligations. In 2020, Bachelet went further. She urged the government of India to ensure that no one else is detained for exercising their rights to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, and to do its utmost in law and policy to protect India's robust civil society. She said, I also urge the authorities to carefully review the FCRA for its compliance with international human rights standards and to release people charged under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act UAPA for simply exercising basic human rights that India is obligated to protect. The Indian government systematically ignored or rejected the UN reports, including the ones on the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. The European Union Parliament also showed some desire to act. Five European Union parliamentary groups representing 559 members out of 751 initiated a strongly worded resolution condemning the CAA in early 2020. Similarly, members of the US Congress raised the issue of the CAA after a hearing of witnesses from Amnesty International and other NGOs. More importantly, US Commission on International Religious Freedom kept downgrading India in its yearly report and alerting India almost every time minorities were under attack, such as during the Delhi riots. Donald Trump, however, never mentioned human rights or religious freedom as an India problem. On the contrary, in the speech he made during his February 2020 visit, when the Delhi riots were starting, he declared that India has always been admired around the earth as the place where millions upon millions of Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, and Christians and Jews worship side by side in harmony. While the BJP articulated an increasingly aggressive and more ethno-religious brand of nationalism, the Congress and state parties that used to pay allegiance to secularism have failed to give voice to an alternative narrative. The Sangh Parivar has turned secularism into a dirty word. The Aam Aadmi Party, while it claimed to be secular, indulged in even more explicit saffronization as Kejriwal himself emulated Narendra Modi in some ways and eulogized the Sangh Parivar with whom he had joined hands during the Anna Hazare movement. The Aam Aadmi Party government remained remarkably silent during the Delhi riots and afterwards. Minorities are not the only casualties of government's growing authoritarianism. The way the government has weakened or intensified its control over key institutions has mechanically worked toward establishing a national authoritarian regime. First, the decline of checks and balances resulted from successful attempts to weaken all the institutions that were in position to balance the government's power. The bureaucrats in charge of these alternative centers, the Election Commission of India, Enforcement Directorate, the Central Information Commission, the Central Bureau of Investigation, the National Investigation Agency, the Central Vigilance Commission, and so on, all have been selected meticulously. Those who took a stand against the rulers have been transferred. In parallel, the media independence has been seriously curbed by restrictions on freedom of expression that affect the internet access as well. Why this authoritarianism not resisted more vigorously in India? The first reason has to do with the fact that populist turned authoritarians do nothing illegal at the start and they adopt an incremental modus operandi. This is how democracies dies. The erosion of democracy takes piecemeal, often in each baby steps. Each individual step seems minor, none appear to truly threaten democracy. Indeed, government moves to subvert democracy frequently and enjoy a veneer of legality. They are approved by parliaments or ruled constitutional by the Supreme Courts. In the initial phase of authoritarianism, only minorities are affected, be they be religious minorities or activists, liberals, human rights activists, or and so on. The majority is safe, and in India, it often indulges in Hindu majoritarianism. Most citizens have no reason to complain as their lives have not changed at all by small incremental steps. The explanation may be that democracy in today's India has lost its importance compared to security or perceived security threat which holds the population in fear. The third explanation harks back to the political culture of India and the traditional submission to hierarchy and acceptance of authority that of a charismatic leader in particular. In his closing speech to the Constituent Assembly in 1949, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar highlighted a cultural explanation of the submission to authority that seemed him so commonplace in India. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar says, there is nothing wrong in being grateful to great men who have rendered lifelong services to the country. But there are limits to gratefulness, as has been well said by the Irish patriot Daniel O'Connell. No man can be grateful at the cost of his honor. No woman can be grateful at the cost of her chastity. And no nation can be grateful at the cost of its liberty. This caution is far more necessary in the case of India than in the case of any other country. For in India, bhakti, or what may be called the path of devotion or hero worship, plays a part in its politics unequaled in magnitude by the part it plays in the politics of any other country in the world. Bhakti in religion may be a road to the salvation of the soul, but in politics, bhakti or hero worship is sure road to degradation and to eventual dictatorship. So the words that Modi supporters, also known as Andhabhakts, used to describe his power often belong indeed to the realm of supernatural forces. Certainly, this image has been constructed by the public relation agencies he has hired since the Gujarat years. But a large fraction of the Indian public has made its own in a rather uncritical manner. But Modi is exceptional not only on account of his acts, but also owing to his style. He appears to sacrifice his life for people like a fakir, a figure he came to epitomize even more in 2020 by growing long white beard. This echoes the idea of the selfless world renouncer or a highly prestigious figure in Indian culture. The last reason why few people resist the regime's libertical inclination is fear, a sentiment that is paralyzing an increasingly large number of Indian citizens. Newsrooms and media are not the only target, but the people other than just journalists have censored themselves because of fear. In 2018, a division bench of Bombay High Court observed, they say, we are witnessing a tragic phase in the country today. Citizens already feel that they can't voice their concern or opinions fearlessly. Besides, those who are afraid to leave their neighborhood because their physical appearance designates them as a minority member, any institution and any group may be targeted, including bureaucrats and judges who may be transferred or even sued and jailed. Even some businessmen live in fear of income tax department, enforcement directorate and CBI raids. India has acquired attributes of a police state not only by resorting routinely to draconian anti-terror laws like the USPA and by charging journalists for sedition, but also by developing a sophisticated surveillance system. Those accused in the Bhima Koregaon case were booked on the basis of evidence retrieved from their phones and computers. Soon after, it appeared that these phones and computers had been infected by snooping software developed by an Israeli company, the Enoso Group, which sells it only to government agencies. This software called Pegasus gives attackers control over the mobile devices of the persons targeted. WhatsApp, the application used by the attackers to break into phones, has sued the Enoso group, but the Indian government, which in the previous months and years had upgraded its collaboration with Israel and several technological domains, including artificial intelligence, has not commented on the affair. Indian nationalism and populism have fed discontent by scapegoating religious minorities, notably Muslims and Dalit, while increasing pride for many Hindus. The Supreme Court forced the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting to withdraw its proposal for social media monitoring in 2018, considering that if such proposals was implemented, India would be moving towards a surveillance state. But in 2021, the government is still eager to develop a tool that would monitor social media users and their sentiments and track trends relevant to government related activities that may have adverse impact on socio-economic fiber of society, it argues. BJP leaders elogize Brahmin authority without any inhibitions. BJP Speaker of the Gujarat Assembly, Rajendra Trivedi, remarked that the draft constitution was prepared and handed over to Dr. Ambedkar by a Brahmin, Sir B.N. Rao. The BJP Speaker of Lok Sabha, Om Birla, went step further in defense of caste system. He says, Brahmin community always works towards guiding all other communities, and the community has always held a guiding role in the nation. It has always played a role in spreading education and values in the society. And even today, if just one Brahmin family lives in a village or a hutment, then that Brahmin family always hold a high position due to its dedication and service. Hence, Brahmins are held in high regard in the society by virtue of their birth. On another occasion, when he speaking about intercaste marriages, he said, if we want to bind the society together, then there is only one arrangement today. Like our ancestors used to forge alliances for marriage, we today have Brahmin Parichay Sammelan, and if we want to save the society, then this is the lone alternative. For Sri Om Birla, the unity of society could only come from caste order. After Yogi Adityanath was elected Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Hindu priests made elaborate arrangements for purifying rituals at the sprawling chief minister's bungalow, which had been previously occupied by Akhilesh Yadav, Mayawati, and Mulayam Singh Yadav. Similar rituals were also organized in Udupi by Sangh Parivar, alleging that it was rendered impure due to the presence of Dalit demonstrators. From all this, one can deduce that a new, powerful political lexicon has emerged under the Modi regime, which is different to what we have seen in India since independence. Finally, a new language has emerged more powerfully than before in the Indian polity since the rise of BJP RSS hegemony. The new language is Hindutva, Sangh Parivar, Moditva, personalization of power and heroization, rise of Bajrang Dal, Sangh Parivar's armed wing, Hindu majoritarianism, Hinduizing the public sphere, the crusade against liberals, targeting of minorities, anti-Christian xenophobia, recurrent mobilization against Muslims, a de facto Hindu Rashtra, vigilance and state administration, the rise of parallel state, digital vigilantism, a physical violence against secularists, slow death of the right to information, the National Investigation Agency and the CBI from cage parrots to watchdog on a leash, the Supreme Court from resistance to surrender, electoral authoritarianism, majoritarianism fighting dissent, judicial majoritarianism prepared the ground for Ram Temple in Ayodhya, redefining citizenship on an ethno-religious basis, Citizenship Amendment Act, National Population Register (NPR), dilution of reservation, Ghar Wapsi, anti-conversion laws, demonetization, resisting love jihad, Gau Rakshak vigilantism, lynching in the name of cow protection, current control of media, weakening of the election commission, the decline of parliament, Modi Bhakts, politicizing, political sloganizing of Jai Shri Ram, Hindu majoritarianism against secularism, crusade against liberal and the left, anti-Christian xenophobia, Islamophobia, digital vigilantism, trolls and harassments of journalists. India is now a land of political facades and smoke screen. On one hand, Dalits, Muslims, Christians are murdered in the name of caste and religion, but at the same time, we see the BJP nominates a tribal for the post of President of India. This is symbolism to showcase to the world how BJP has democratized the Indian polity, which in reality is a facade and a smokescreen to cover up operation of its own citizens. The Republic of India has become a republic of fear. Many Indian people be saved from its political masters. Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar says, our constitution must not be a dictatorship, but must be a constitution in which there is a parliamentary democracy, where government is all the time on the anvil, so as to say, on its trial responsible to the people, responsible to the judiciary, then I have no hesitation in saying that the principles embodied in the constitution are as good as, if not better than, the principles embodied in any other constitutions. So, this is the situation which is currently going on regarding the principles of secularism, justice, liberty, and equality. This is the true face of India which we are experiencing. I truly, from my bottom of heart, I thank Dr. Ambedkar Mission Society Brisbane to present my subject, my talk at this world stage. I thank each and everyone who gave me precious time to listen to me. Thank you, all of you. Jai Bhim, Jai Bharat.